Hello, and welcome back. Build Stuff 2021 on stage 6, the Saturn stage. We got another 3 awesome speakers to come up this afternoon. And first of all, it is my pleasure to introduce Lemon. Lemon, welcome to the stage. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
We're not doing bad, thanks. How are you doing there?
I'm doing very good. I'm doing very good. I mean, I wish I was in Lithuania, but you know, there we have it. Instead, I just woke up super early in the morning and pretended like I'm having a normal day.
Where are you joining us from?
Minneapolis, Minnesota. So everything's getting cold, but it's not quite there yet.
Awesome. Another speaker from across the pond. Well, yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So Lemon, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Wow, excellent. All right, fantastic. Well, let's do this thing. Hey, this talk is called Shrink the Web. If you look at this thing on your show or the show notes, it's much longer, which is silly. I don't know why I ever submit this talk with like 45 words. It's called Shrink the Web. And hi, I'm Lemon, and I make websites. I've been making websites for like 20 years or so, made websites for fun, made websites for money. And one of the things that's allowed me to do is situations like this, where I get to go to conferences and talk about making websites. And the specific talk that I want to talk about right now, I want to talk to you about performance, by which I mean website performance. Okay, so that I know it can be a little bit dry, maybe a little bit boring, but we're going to actually make this fun, and we're going to talk about something that matters, because performance actually does matter quite a lot. So I'm going to go through the agenda real quick here. The agenda that we've got is we're going to talk about what's the problem, then we're going to talk about why should I care, and then what should I do about it, and then finally we're going to close with how can I be happy, asterisk, but like specifically with my website. As far as like your own like cosmic happiness or your internal happiness, there's only so much I can do about that. But we're going to make you happier with your website. But there will be a test, but there will be lots of tests. But the fun thing about doing web development tests is you don't have to do them. The computer actually does them for you. So while we're doing our test, let's just play a game. I got a game right here, and you might recognize it. This is a video game some of you will recognize, and some of you are babies, but this is Doom. I'm going to tell you a couple things about Doom. It was released by id Software in 1993. It's played by 20 million people in the first 2 years. The first 2 years of the game's release. This popularized the first-person shooter genre. There were other first-person shooters that existed before this, most notably like Wolfenstein 3D. But Doom was the game that sort of changed everything, and this made like first-person shooters into a real genre that people continue to copy blandly forever. The sequels continue to this day. Doom Eternal just came out like a year ago or so, and it did have its own custom game engine. There was an engine that was written from the ground up by John Carmack in order to make this thing work. And of all of those things about Doom and how it changed the world, another fact about Doom is that it came in at a file size of 2.39 megabytes, which means that it would fit on like 2 different like 3.5-inch floppies, which was the style at the time, where they wore an onion on their belts. So now that we've talked a little bit about Doom, I want to show you another piece of software that I found on the internet. And that piece of software is this, and oh, it's already fucked up. No, wait, it needs to refresh. Okay, here we go. So this is OnFold 2017. It's the best rated top seller on ThemeForest. This is a WordPress theme. Let's look over the hover states. That's okay. We're going to scroll down, and we've got this kind of like pictures of, oh, there's some parallax stuff. Everyone likes parallax stuff. That's cool. Let's have some hover effects. More parallax, there's some white people, and then we scroll down and we got some more white people, and of course a scroll to the top of the screen button, because I always forget how to scroll to the top of the screen when you get to the bottom. I go there and I go, ooh, I'm lost. I guess I'm done now. I wanted to see what was on the top, but without that button, I don't know what to do. So this is OnFold 2017. It has been downloaded, according to their own website, about 7 or 8 million times. And I've got some facts about this. It's $59 on ThemeForest, so go ahead and get yours now. It's got parallax, and that's exciting. It's got 35 words, 35 images, 9 fonts, and 5 scripts. I'm talking just about the homepage. This isn't the website install. I'm talking just about the homepage. And on this homepage, we got 1,333 words. And if I go to this on a 3G connection, it will take longer than 15 seconds for this home page to load. The weight here, 3.56 megabytes. I say more than 15 seconds because 3G is kind of unreliable, so we don't know exactly how long it could take, but it would definitely take more than 15 seconds. But we got 3.56 megabytes, which means that this is 148% bigger than the video game Doom. And so the question is, okay, if that's the case, was this 148% better than the video game Doom? And I guess you get to make your own decisions from there. I would personally say that I did not enjoy that experience more than the video game Doom, but you know, it's up to you to decide. But this actual, this thing that I noticed is not mine uniquely alone. I didn't exactly come up with this. I originally was reading about this in a blog article on Wired. The average web page is now the size of the original Doom. This dates all the way back to 2016, and then it was blogged about a fair amount from there. So once it showed up in Wired, it showed up in PC World magazine, and then I saw it at one point on geek.com. And when I looked at this page, in order to do this screenshot, I was like, how come this blog article, the average web page, is now larger than the original Doom? How come this web page is loading like shit? Well, that's weird. So, okay, I'm in a browser. I can see what website performances look like. So I'm going to open up the sort of network tab, and let's go ahead and do the network tab, and let's do a request. We got network tab open. We're going to do a request here on geek.com. The average web page is larger than Doom. Okay, well, we've already loaded 10 megabytes of data, and the average web page is larger than, we've loaded 450 requests so far. The average web page is larger than 650 requests. We're up to 26 megabytes. The average web page is larger than, oh, we seem to be slowing down. Okay, so about 711 requests is what we have here for this little blog article talking to us about website performance. So that probably seems problematic, but also not an outlier. This exact trend has actually gone in this direction for quite a while. If we look at website file size over time, this is a data that's kept by the HTTP archive. And over time, people have talked about this idea of website performance and kind of like minifying these things, but it hasn't changed the trend. The trend has gone the exact same way. I just redid these slides last night. And this number keeps going up. This number does not seem to abate. I don't know what happened in 2018. Maybe we got saner for a second and then we gave up on it. But this number, we are up to, at this point, like at an average web page, several megs of website file or web page file size over time. And then, okay, so you might look at this and you go like, well, okay, so this is more data, this is more bits over the wire, but like, this is computers, man. This is computers. And like, what about Moore's Law? Moore's Law, of course, was named after Julianne Moore from The Big Lebowski. And that's not true, but it gives me the opportunity to talk about The Big Lebowski again. So I will take that opportunity. But Moore's Law is this idea, if you're not familiar with it, that states that like every something years, computers get faster. And like, that's not exactly true anymore. Like there was a time when like computers themselves got faster, but when we're talking about speeds and processing time, that's not proving true to be true at all. So for example, if we look at broadband speeds in 2015, right? Here's a little map of what that looks like. And then if we extend that out to 2021, we can see that the colors changed. So they were originally the sort of like red to green, and now they're blue to blue. So like that's different. But also we can see that there's a really uneven disbursement of these broadband speeds that like, okay, so if I'm looking at like Norway or like the United States, like that seems to be pretty fast, but like that collection of speeds doesn't stay consistent from country to country. And if we dial into that, it looks more like that. So if I go to the broadband speed index, so we can see here that in number one, Singapore, yeah, man, if you're in Singapore, then your actual broadband rates, it's not really a problem. Even Thailand, 173, that's very fast. But then we start to move this thing down. We get to number 6, States over there. Hello. And then there you are, Lithuania at 91.26 megabytes. Okay, not slow. But also not a complete standard bearer, because we go down to Latvia, 56. We got Croatia at 38. We've got Greece at 29. That's a broadband network speed. Barely looks like it. And so this disbursement, depending on where your actual customers are, changes a lot. And also, this is broadband. And when I look at my own website's analytics, I can see that like people are probably not coming from this direction. They're probably coming from mobile. We look at the speed text index in mobile, things change significantly. United Arab Emirates at 130 megabytes for mobile is surprisingly fast. But then we get down there, Norway, we've got United States there, 53, pretty close to you guys in Lithuania at 48. But then we get down into like Ireland, starts to get pretty slow, and sort of Belarus and Venezuela. Like this is the average mobile speed of people in this country. And it is not the speed that you're developing at. That's what I know, is that like you have the code open in one monitor, you have the browser open in another monitor. What I know is that you're not testing against these speeds. And people are seeing them at these speeds. And the other thing about mobile data is that there's some other factor in there, which is cost. There's another study by cable.co.uk about like the average cost of 1 gigabyte in mobile data. If I live in Israel, okay, well, that's incredibly cheap, right? Italy, Poland, Lithuania, pretty good. United States actually getting a little bit cheaper, but when we go down into these later prices, here's the thing about this. I redid all 3 of these charts last night, and all 3 of these charts got worse. From the last time I gave this talk, broadband speeds went down, mobile speeds went down, and cost of mobile data went up. These numbers get worse, and these numbers matter, because like if you're saying, well, okay, if somebody's going to go to my website, what I'm going to do is like jam this video there at the moment that they come in. Okay, cool. Except for the person that then sees that website on their phone. Did you just charge them money for that? Like, did you just like take a bite out of their bandwidth in order to do that? And was it worth it? I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying think about whether or not it was worth it, because these things will take time, right? If we look at 3 megabytes, so this is our 3 megabyte website on 4G, it already happened. Our 3G plus, cool, we're gonna get that. Our regular 3G at 10 seconds, that was feeling a little slow. And then our 2G connection, which is something that exists in the real world, that people actually experience the internet on, especially in rural areas, that's never going to happen. We're never going to get to the point that loads. And in fact, this changes, this makes a real difference when you're looking at your actual website stats, because this is a study done by Pingdom about bounce rates over time. If you're not familiar with bounce rates, that's the idea of somebody went to your website and they bounced. They went to whatever your website is.com and they went cool, and then it loaded and they went never mind, and then they just bounced out. Right now, there are people who will claim that if you use their service, you'll get a bounce rate of 0%, and they are liars. That is not an accurate thing, and anyone who says that should not be trusted. But if you can get your bounce rate down like underneath like 10%, you're doing amazing. 5% would be ideal, but like under 10% is a really good metric to hit. So this is like Pingdom took a whole bunch of X factors out in order to get just sort of like the equal distribution of what a bounce rate looks like on the same website if it took this amount of time. And what they found is that once we get into the 3 or 4 seconds, we start to see a really steep incline. And once we actually get to about 8 or 9 seconds, we are over 50%, which means that over 50% of the people that went to your website like came up with it and saw maybe some like text moving around or some sort of spinner and just went, never mind, I don't care about this anymore. And they left forever. And that's a real thing that happens all of the time. I am doing this all of the time, because the thing is that I'm aware, as you are aware, that time is real. It's a thing that we experience. I get to do these web development talks across the country and sometimes into computer screens, and I enjoy it very much. And so I'm excited to do it, and time seems to be going pretty fast, but I'm still experiencing it. I'm still experiencing this passage of time. If you're enjoying this thing, that's great. Maybe for you, time is going a little bit faster, but maybe not, because it is real and you get to watch those seconds go by. And as this is happening, we are aware of the fact that time is finite. We only have so much of it, and we do not want to see it wasted. Okay. That was a lot. Nobody walked into a talk today expecting to have a little treatise on mortality. So let's back this thing up a little bit, because we are clever and we can actually fix these problems. We've got problems in front of us, but we know how to fix these things, or we're going to. And this, I want to tell you, is a talk about easy wins. I'm not going to bring you zealotry. I'm going to bring you minimal sacrifices. I have seen web performance talks before where people say, like, you have to have a budget of this much thing, and you have to build it with this kind of, and your process has to be whatever. I do not trust zealots, and I do not trust outsiders to come in and say, you should be doing a website this way. I am very suspicious of that. And that's not what I want to bring to you. What I want to bring to you is that you have a website, it's working as well as it is, and you want to make incremental changes with as few sacrifices as possible. And that's what we want to do. So let's start with the easy stuff. This is going to be sort of the chart that I'm going to give you that's the most fuzzy. But we've got here sort of I would say a napkin sketch of a website load, right? We've got our HTML taking up not that much of our actual package size. Our fonts, you know, particularly like Google fonts and those kind of things, can get kind of substantial sometimes. If we're doing like a WAF, that can get even bigger. CSS, especially with the libraries now, your Tailwind or whatever can start to take up a bit. And then JavaScript, I mean, you know, can be a big fat hog in a whole lot of sites. But there's actually one thing that we don't have in this chart, which I think makes a little bit of a difference. And that one thing is images. So if we look at images in relation to the rest of these things, and we want to make this the first and most meaningful changes to this, I think we have a pretty clear place to start. So we can do that in Photoshop. I'm going to do a quick Photoshop tutorial on this general idea. If you have never experienced it before, or you never use Photoshop because it's too expensive, I would actually encourage you to check out Affinity Photo. I started using it about 6 or 7 months ago, and it's actually really good. I originally got into it for the price. It's like $50 one time, and then you're done. But the thing about it is that they got to ideate on the idea of, like, what if Photoshop didn't have 30 years of history? Anyway, that was an aside. Affinity Photo, check it out if you like. But if I'm looking at something in Photoshop and I want to make this thing shrinky dink, then I'm going to have a regular photo that I'm looking at all the time. What am I looking at? It's pictures of Bjork. That's really what I do all of the time, is I look at pictures of Bjork. And if I want to save this thing for the web, there's a lot of different places I can go, right? There's a save as. There's a generate, there's a share, there's embed, but actually sort of hidden a little bit in this interface is an option called export save for web legacy. And I do not know, actually I do know why they called it save for web legacy, is that they've got 2 options up, something called export as, that Adobe would like you to use, but it has much fewer options and you get less control over what that end thing looks like. But if we go save for web legacy, then it kind of looks a little bit like this. Oh, wait, this is save for web legacy in a save for web legacy interface. I am very clever. Anyway, so we're going to take this image of Bjork and we're just going to save this thing for web. And we can see that when we start off here with our raw image is weighing in here at 2.5 megabytes, the image itself. That's something that I downloaded off some music website, and that's the way that they serve it to me, 2.5 megabytes. So if we look at that on, for example, a lousy cable connection, we've got this taken, you know, 3 or 4 seconds to actually get this thing down to me. And so we can just sort of look at this thing, at this export thing, and get that file size down. So right now we're down to about 690K, so getting significantly better. We can actually match this thing up against itself. And we can actually go into like low resolution, right? So here I am at 240K. It says low resolution, but like if I look at it, it definitely looks fine. I can compare this against the source image and okay, I can tell the difference, but I wouldn't say that the difference is something that breaks me. So I can go in this thing and just sort of like adjust my quality setting. And what I'm trying to do is like get it to where it's small enough while still being able to go, I don't have a problem with this. This isn't too low res to bother me. And so eventually, maybe I've got my idea of, now we're at 218K, and I feel like source material to export are about right. So I'm going to save this thing. I'm going to save this thing out, and I'm just going to save it in the same place as all of my other Bjork photos, so that I can keep a nice collection. So we started out here at 2.34 megabytes, and then we got ourselves down to 219K. So that's 91% smaller. And I did not, in this demo, I did not, in my opinion, sacrifice any amount of quality whatsoever. I did not downsample this thing. I did not make it worse. I just made it more compact. And that's going to come over a lot better on the wire. So that's one option. But then there's also something that Jake Archibald made some time ago. Jake Archibald is a Googler. And he made something called Squoosh. So Squoosh is a WebAssembly website that actually does kind of the same thing, but all in the browser. So I'm going to show you this real quick. So we're going to go to this WebAssembly PWA, and this is sort of what it looks like. They redesigned it, I'd say maybe like 3 or 4 months ago. And what it's going to want to do is just accept an image for me. So I'm going to go over here and just, here's my folder of Bjork images. I'm going to give this thing a Bjork image. Okay, and then sort of similar to our Photoshop interface, we've got our side-by-side comparison. So starting from nothing, what we've got here is 4.74 megabytes. That was the size I found it in the world. And doing nothing at all, I'm down to 1.13. Okay, that's pretty good, but I think we can actually get better. So we can adjust our quality here. And our quality can go, you know, sort of down, and we can resample this thing and kind of like look at the resulting difference. Okay, and I feel like once we get down to like 37, this gets a little bit worse. So we're not going to necessarily do that. But I can also look into the fact that for some reason, the website that I went to gave me this as a width of 3,900. Well, that's not strictly necessary. So let's get this down to about 1,600. And we can sort of play with this over time. Now we're down to 162K, which is obviously considerably smaller. I've got different export options. I can do this as a JPEG. I can do this as a PNG. I can do this as a WebP, which is something I'm going to get to in just a second. But eventually I can get kind of happy with this, right? Because I'm going to go down and just kind of like play with the quality. And maybe I get this all the way down here, and like maybe that's actually a pretty good image. Like that's not bad. Like I don't mind that, but like maybe that's not exactly what I wanted to end up with. Here's something where it looks a little bit like an Amiga screen, like a DOS adventure. That's pretty good. But eventually I'm going to kind of get to this point where I can be happy with this image, save that thing out. And I think the last sort of acceptable one we were looking at was about over here, about 160K. Right? And that's down from nearly 5 megs. So I can save this in any form, my browser JPEG, my PNG, or my WebP. WebP is a sort of like new-ish spec. And the actual support on it has been getting significantly better. If we go to Can I Use? So WebP is a Google-made spec about, well, you have to make these decisions, JPEG versus PNG usually. And they were like, well, what if you didn't have to do that? What if there was a format that was lossless or lossy and it included animation? And other companies were like, that's awesome. And then Apple was like, you're Google, so no, we're not going to support that because like, go to hell. And so like Safari support at this point is still sort of on the fence. That's one reason why I would recommend using WebP in some situations, but if you are doing this on a production website, I would say make sure you set a fallback of a JPEG or a PNG or whatever, because the Safari support for WebP is not going to be as good as you want it to be. But relatively, man, Chrome's market share is insane. Every time I see that number, I go, wow. Anyway, so we did this whole thing, and that was great, except we had to kind of like screw around in screens and kind of like look at pixels and spend a little bit of the time. And then you're like, Lemon, can I just do this automatically? Yes, you absolutely can. Another person I'm going to introduce you to is Dan. Dan works actually at a bunch of places now. I don't know where he's at currently, but he did make something called Imagebot. And Imagebot is this little robot that exists inside of GitHub, and you can add it as a collaborator. You can add as a collaborator to your project, and then what happens is you just start to get pull requests. I got a pull request right there. And Imagebot, every time I do my own pull request, Imagebot will kind of like look at that and we'll see if it can improve your images. And beep boop, I've reduced your file size by 5%. Imagebot here, I will always do a pixel to pixel comparison. So it's going to try to like diminish file while never, ever, ever touching quality. So that makes it safe. But it also means it's not going to be the most impactful because there's no human at the end of this that goes like, oh, this degradation is actually okay. But what you can do is you can just assign Imagebot to your project, and then it's just going to batch all of these things through. And so you don't have to think about it. Which I think is, so if you're looking at something, for example, like a hero image, your big banner of, I don't know where you work, but like something, lawyers are shaking hands or whatever. Yeah, that thing, bring into Squoosh, kind of like look at that because that's going to make a lot of difference. But your other, 700 photos, you can just let Imagebot take care of those. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference that I want to talk about for a second between JPEG, PNG, and GIF. So a JPEG is lossy. You're going to be using it for photos and rectangles and resizable things. A PNG is lossless. That's a good choice for literally anything with a transparent background, but also drawing, screenshots. If you got a little like pencil drawing or whatever, PNG's probably a good shot. SVG is vector and SVG rules. SVG is very, very cool, and I don't have time to talk about it right now. But next year, build stuff. First of all, I'm coming to Lithuania again, and then we're going to talk about SVGs because they are very exciting. But you're going to use this for like logos or icons, anything with limited complexity, shapes, that sort of thing. And then a GIF is used for nothing. A GIF is actually used for pretty much nothing. Anything that you actually think is a GIF is an MP4. Because 2021, these things have changed. GIFs are not the optimal file type. I tweeted about this and I said this is a sneak preview of my upcoming talk and included that particular slide saying that GIFs are used for absolutely nothing. And a friend of mine said, I love that image is a GIF. And I said, thank you so much for taking the bait. That was my point. If you are on Twitter and you see something with GIF in the corner, that is not a GIF. That is not a GIF. That is a looping MP4 that is called a GIF because GIF in the language of the internet actually means like looping thing of a certain duration. Giphy, the thing that exists in your Slack that makes Slack better, it is not giving you GIFs. It is giving you MP4s. The Ministry of GIFs, which is a real thing that exists, does not serve GIFs. They give GIF-like things. They give things that you would call GIFs, but it does not serve GIFs. GIFs don't really exist in the modern internet, unless, of course, it's email, because email doesn't follow any rules. So if you're working on an email and you need to use a GIF or a JFIF or a Targa file or a voodoo curse, to get your email out. I mean, whatever, man, Godspeed. If you're working an email, whatever you can make work, make it happen, because it's a scary world out there. So let's put images to the side for a second and let's go back into the bulk of our sort of like code stack. Because we've got our HTML, we've got our fonts, we've got our CSS, and that JavaScript is looking pretty big. And when we look at the HTML and specifically the CSS and the JavaScript, we can make some real improvements there. We can make some real improvements pretty cheaply too. We can do that with text compression. That's HTML, CSS, and JS. Any of that text that we have in there, let's just try to make it a little bit better. We can do this with a triage situation. So there's three things we can do for our text compression to try to like get those things over the wire faster. First of which is server-side compression. We can bundle and minify these things. We can consider CDNs. Going into the first of these three things, we've got Gzip. If you're not familiar with Gzip, it's a pretty widely used spec. There's other specs that exist for this sort of server-side compression. Gzip is the most popular. It's the one that I'm familiar with, so I'm going to talk about that. But any other one, any other server-side compression, usually pretty much the same. Go ahead and use that one anyway. But if you want to talk about Gzip and how Gzip works, it's actually pretty simple. Gzip works pretty simply. It's just that. So what that says is that H equals, that's like an epsilon, I think. I think log means like logarithm. I have no idea. I have no earthly idea what that means. But what I know is that Gzip will actually take things, compress them, send them over the wire, and uncompress them on the other side. Looking at that algorithm, this is actually a talk that Raul gave at JSConf EU in 2014. I've watched this talk. It's really good, but I do not know what that algorithm means anymore. It's like a scientific thing. Anyway, here's the TLDR of this. Gzip means less bits over the wire and does not have a downside that I am aware of. So turn it on. If you're the person that is in charge of the actual hosting or the server or whatever, just check and see if it's turned on. If it's not, turn it on. If that's not your job, talk to the person that does turn this thing on and just ask them if it is. And if they say it's not, well, try to get a good reason. So that was number one. Number two, we've got bundling and minifying. And I'm going to talk about those two things separately. So if in the question of why bundle, that's actually solved by a different math problem, or a math answer, I should say. And that math is that 100K is smaller than 10 times 10K. My kid's math teacher would hate that answer, but it is actually true. In internet terms, this is a true statement because every single file that I need to serve to you is a new network request. And so the fewer amounts of network requests that I can make is actually going to improve how much bandwidth is coming down the wire. And it's also going to improve the rendering time on the browser paint. So the more that you can bundle these things together, even if those file sizes are exactly identical, as long as you can create fewer files, that means less file requests, and that means that things get that much faster. So that was bundling. Into minification. Why Minify? Okay, so there's a library that's out there, and it is how you do time zones. It's called Moment.js. I think it's great because I think that time zones stink, and I don't want to ever think about time zones. But 148K is pretty big, right? So maybe that's a consideration. But if I minify that down, moment.min.js is 51K. It's doing the same thing. It's just that I can read one piece of code and a computer can read the other piece of code. So that's why minification does make a difference. So in that case of bundling and minifying, I mean, what am I going to do? Am I going to go in there and delete spaces or carriage returns? I'm going to change all my variables to be X and foo? No. How are you going to minify? Okay, that actually super depends. What I'm going to tell you here is that there's a lot of ways to do these sort of concatenations and minifications and whatever. And these are specific to what you like. And if you're at a job, what your company uses. Lots of people use Webpack, which I personally hate, but it does the job. And so if you're going to do that in Webpack is the thing that's going to do your bundling and minification. There's Grunt, there's Gulp, there's Veet, there's a whole bunch of situations, and sort of depends on what your environment looks like. I'm going to just tell you what my preferred environment looks like, and you can make a decision from there. So what I personally use is something called Prepros. So Prepros is a little GUI because I avoid the command line whenever absolutely possible. I want to avoid the command line, and this GUI is basically Grunt, but it's Grunt that you click on. And so this thing will run in Windows or Mac or Linux. And what I've got here is a situation where Prepros is watching my files, right? So here's my talk, right? And if I go into any sort of JS file and I make a change, Prepros will be watching those changes. And I'll go hit save, and Prepros will go, oh, you saved that here. Let me minify that or shrink that thing down for you. I do like it a lot, and it really does speed up the many dumb websites I do. And it also makes those things serve a whole lot faster. So I won't tell you to use that because there's also, Code Kit is a Mac only thing, also fantastic. Or, you know, if you do like the command line grunt or gulp, they're also fantastic. Broccoli is, I think broccoli is actually something else, but there's a whole bunch of situations, and whatever you like is totally great, but try to find something that does your bundling and your minification, because it really will make a difference in your users' lives and in your own. Finally, there's the topic of CDNs. In this case, I'm going to talk about, like, you know, CDNs that are going to serve those sort of libraries like CDN.js, JS Deliver, Google hosted libraries. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but, you know, if you're serving something from a CDN, I think that there's two advantages. Now, if you want to make arguments about like security or whatever, and you don't want to do that, that's okay. I'm just saying this is something to be considered, because if you serve files from a shared CDN, first of all, that CDN is probably faster than your servers. I do not know where you work. But I know that any file that I can serve to the internet, I'm not going to get it faster than Cloudflare is. Like, Cloudflare is always going to get that thing to my user faster than I could possibly do. So I'm going to think about that when I'm actually serving my files. The other thing that's important to think about, in my opinion, is that your users actually already have jQuery. Any browser in the world that is like regularly viewing websites, yes, of course, you can serve your jQuery from a CDN. You can say, like, here's jQuery, go ahead and use it. But your user is going to have a cache version of that, as long as you're serving that from a shared CDN, because the browser will say, oh, there's jQuery, but it's a version of jQuery I've already seen, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. And then you actually take that, I believe, 32K or whatever, and you make it 0, because the browser doesn't actually have to download that thing anymore. A lot of those common libraries, your Moment, your Vue, your jQuery, your Select2, you know, like whatever, those things already exist on your users' browsers. So if you use a CDN, you get to skip that, you get to bypass that kind of library download. One last person I'm going to introduce you to is Paul Irish. Paul Irish is another person that works at Google. He's sort of the person that they seem to like move into, like, when a team needs a genius, they just sort of like put Paul Irish over there. One of the teams that he was on is he worked on Lighthouse. And Lighthouse, you actually already have this on your computer. It's already there. You just need to open up Chrome. So I'm in Chrome right now. I'm going to go to build stuff.events. And then if I look at this thing in the inspector and go over to my Lighthouse tab, there's a couple of things this can do. It can measure against accessibility, which it does an okay job of. SEO is, I mean, marketing buzzword, so who cares? But we're going to look at this thing in performance base, and we're gonna say, okay, let's show me the desktop view and show me how this performance is doing. And so what this thing is doing now is it's basically like rendering this web page, the build stuff.events web page, in real time, and sort of like putting that against a whole bunch of metrics. And it takes a little while to do it. But what it's going to do is actually give you sort of a picture to go forward from, because you're going to actually see a screen of everything that's going on in the site and be able to make sort of like meaningful decisions, which I think is important. I'm not calling out build stuff for this, because we should never expect perfect in websites. We just want to test to see like what improvements can be made. We've got a score over there, 65. Great, cool. That's cool. The first contentful page at less than a second is fantastic. But I want to actually scroll down past this point, because I think that the thing that I think is really necessary or helpful about Lighthouse is down here, because what it will say to you is, I have found you know, the following problems that I want you to be aware of, but it's actually going to tell you like, well, this isn't great, you know, like avoid enormous payloads, and it'll show you like where those files are. Here we see a couple of pings that are about 0.5 meg apiece, and it's going to sort of highlight like those specific things that could be improved. That, I think, is way more interesting than the score. The score is great, cool, whatever. You can brag about it, or, I don't know, put it on your wall and make a little diploma. That's cool. But the thing that I think is interesting is looking at these specific things as bullet points to go, okay, well, here's a thing that I can improve. It won't take that long, and it'll probably make a difference. So running Lighthouse tests, I strongly recommend, because again, you can just do these incremental changes over time. We're not trying to get all the way to 100. We're just trying to make things a little bit better, trying to make ourselves a little bit happier. I want to give you this picture here, closing this thing out. I think I did okay on time. But this is a picture of somebody. This is a Apollo astronaut, or sorry, Apollo project scientist named Margaret Hamilton. And says legendary Apollo project programmer Margaret Hamilton next to a printout of the node modules directory listing for her first Hello World React app. Funny, right? Somebody printed out all of their node modules and they looked like this, right? That's funny, right? That's funny. But then Gary Bernhardt actually did the math and he said, well, okay, hang on. Let me look at like a Hello World React app and like look at what node modules it creates. And then I'm just going to kind of like figure out like, well, what's the font size? You know, what's the piece of paper? Like how thick is a piece of paper? And, you know, is it double-sided or whatever? So Gary Bernhardt tries to go through all of the math of like, what would happen if you printed out, if you actually printed out the node modules directory for React Hello World. We finally went through all these calculations and sort of like, you know, fudged a couple numbers and then eventually came back with returning to the original photo of Margaret Hamilton standing next to a printout of her node modules directory. The paper is about as tall as her. Therefore, Margaret Hamilton is almost 18 feet tall. So that's real. That's real. And that's Hello World. And that's not specific to React either. If we look at our 3 most popular frameworks and what Hello World looks like in those, in the case of Vue, we're at 106 megabytes, React at 111, Angular 222. Now there's a little bit of cheating in there because Angular actually includes those icons, the sort of like material icons in those things. That gets the file size up a little bit, but that still is true. If I do Hello World in any of these frameworks, I'm downloading this much material and I haven't started yet. I haven't started building a website. And that's going to actually get me into the problem where when these build stuffs are this complicated, then I'm going to lose sight of like how to change something. It's a lot easier to change a website when there's very little information, when there's too much. And you go like, well, what hook is there? And you talk to some project manager and then, oh, you have to go over here and this thing links to there and this thing links to there. This is a real world scenario that we did to ourselves. And I don't even know that we did it on purpose. If we look at Angular Hello World, we can say that Angular Hello World, in our comparison there about a website being as big as the original Doom, Angular Hello World is as big as SimCity 2000, plus an install of Minecraft, plus an install of Papers, Please, plus Army of Me, the Bjork song at 256 kilobytes, or yeah. It is all of those things together, and that is before you started coding. So what's to be done about all of this? In my opinion, there's one thing that can be done about this, and that thing is write HTML. HTML is the fundamental language of the internet. HTML is the thing that's powering all of these websites. HTML is the forgotten child of these websites, but it's what your browser will end up doing. If you think that a robot is better at writing HTML better than you, write more HTML and maybe you won't think that anymore. This communication that you have with your users gets so much more effective when you can actually write in the fundamental language and do not allow robot interceptors to get there. Seriously, write HTML and CSS. Thank you. My name's Lemon. That's my daughter, Simone. I think she's downstairs right now. If you're looking for the slides for this talk, I've got the slides at that address on GitHub. If you're looking for stickers, I know that as developers, we all love stickers. And I've got these shiny stickers right here that I would very much love to give you. So, you know, get a hold of me on GitHub or ahoylemon.xyz or Twitter or whatever you like. Get a hold of me. Tell me you want stickers. You don't even have to give me postage. I'll just send you stickers because I think it's fun to send out stickers to people. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you very, 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 very soon and drink with you as well.
Thank you so much. That was spectacular. That is the only word I can use there. Spectacular. I feel sorry for the speaker that has to follow you, and I really feel for them. Because
no. I hear the next speaker.
That was I am just mind blown with that whole thing. That was a spectacular talk. Thank you so much. We don't have any particular questions in the chat, but we've got comments that I really want to bring to you. From Denny, finally having the time to see Lemon speaking. To Eugene, love the lemon grab sweater.
Thank you. It is unacceptable.
And from Denny again, great talk, Lemon. What a talk. Happy to see you speaking. I can only echo that myself. I was that engrossed. I didn't take enough notes to ask you questions at the end because it was just, I was watching. I apologize. That was really bad of me doing my job. I'm going to take that away and try and do it. I was watching your thing thinking, okay, my website, I've got a few cool pictures. How many of these things am I doing myself? And let's see what I can change tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to sort of like not pay attention to those kind of things because like, you know, that's just sort of part of the process. But like you don't have to do like, I'm going to do a performance build, you know, and the next month is going to be me doing performance. No, you're just like, well, this is too big. I can make that smaller and that's slightly better.
Yep, and so let's improve it one step at a time. I love the fact that you included Doom at the beginning because my university days started with playing Doom. It was obviously it's what everybody did. You get the shareware and you play those first two levels forever.
Damn right. Well, the first two levels are the best ones anyway. But the shareware had multiplayer in it. Like that was back when the video game developers did stuff for fun rather than for lots and lots of lucre.
Yes, like I remember using that multiplayer version in one of the companies I worked at. The networking was awful. It was all thin wire Ethernet. Yeah. And we used Doom, and later on we used Quake afterwards in order to check our network.
Oh, that's very good.
If Doom could play across the network, we knew that we could send files across the network.
Because the other thing that's cool about that is that you get to like, go like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just testing the network. 3 frags left. Yeah, just testing the network. That's all I'm doing.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank you again. It was, I truly enjoyed that. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you in Oslo. I hope we're not speaking at the same time because that means I can actually see you in person.
Yeah, back at you.
And have a fantastic rest of the day. And to everybody watching either in Lithuania or online, we will be back in around 20 minutes.
Yeah, come back in 20. The next speaker is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.